Jurassic World Chaos Theory has unfortunately come to an end with the release of Season 4. But just as we did for Jurassic World Rebirth and the previous seasons of Jurassic World Chaos Theory, we are going ahead today and unpacking and unraveling all of the hidden details, Easter eggs, and references that you might have missed throughout the entirety of the show. I believe I've counted maybe about 88 of those in total, but if I have missed maybe one or two, feel free to let me know down in the comments. But what a show it has been. Jurassic World Chaos Theory was just truly phenomenal, and I really do appreciate every single second that was spent creating such a thing. So today, out of respect for how good it is, we are going to be breaking down every single detail. And of course, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and press that subscribe button and leave a like on the video if you enjoy it at any given moment. But considering that this video is going to be a very long one, be sure to get some snacks, maybe even your dinner. And we are going to stop yapping right now, as it's time to get into this breakdown. So, Season 4 continues where Season 3 left off, where we have most of the Nublar 6 coming from Malta and heading into the Biosyn Valley. Brooklyn reenacts her storytelling of the events of that one specific night where she lost her arm. Then Ben chimes in with the first reference of the show, where he reconfirms that Biosyn are the official destination for all dinosaurs caught by the government agencies around the world, something that was verbally established at the start of Jurassic World Dominion.
Yeah, but Biosyn's not going to make it easy for us. According to this, they're now the official destination for all dinosaurs caught by every government agency around the world.
To combat the growing threat of illegal poachers, the US Congress awarded sole collection rights to the global giant, Biosyn Genetics.
This shot approaching the Biosyn facility is very reminiscent of the one shot from Jurassic World Dominion and Jurassic World Evolution 2, when Ramsey, Ellie, and Alan are all within the same helicopter. Even more, the scene then continues on in both Dominion and Chaos Theory, where the dinosaur enthusiasts of both scenes look outside of the helicopter window where they first lay their eyes on a sauropod, Alan Grant with the Dreadnoughtus and Darius Bauman with the Brachiosaurus. Interestingly, InGen parasaurs are also spotted within the valley, confirming that Biosyn took a hold of these variants as well, and not just their own that we see in Dominion. But continuing on, the Quetzalcoatlus chases after the helicopter with the same purpose as it did with Kayla, suggesting that aerial visitors don't actually get a good welcome because of this flying beast if the ADS isn't activated. But then we swap on over to the other two campers, Sammy and Kenji, who I think have one of the best dynamics of the show, by the way. They both start to open up about their lives, and Kenji refers back to meeting Lewis Dodson previously in Camp Cretaceous. But once they arrive, you can see they've gotten the correct Biosyn vehicles, and they're also hooked up to electric charging points, something that was covered in external Biosyn media for Jurassic World Dominion. The vehicles are indeed electric. Anyways, Rexy arrives at the facility, which correlates back to Ramsey confirming that the T-Rex just arrived in the valley before Ellie and Alan arrived. We can even see her tranquilized in Dominion ready for transport, which means the very next time we see her in the timeline is in Chaos Theory. But not only that, but Lewis Dodson starts to question why Kenji Kon was invited to this event, and he even mentions Ramsey's name. But this is actually the only time Ramsey is mentioned in the whole entire show. The campers arrive to the Biosyn Valley, and a lot of the facility looks insanely accurate to Jurassic World Dominions. They've got the fountain, the statues, the grass, the paths, everything. It's fantastic. And then cutting back, the Giganotosaurus walks through the tree line ready to battle the Rex, just like it did in Dominion, once again winning against Rexy, depicting the first of 4, maybe 5 battles between these two. But soon after, when Dodson goes to take both Sammy and Kenji to the Hyperloop, you can actually hear the same sound the door makes from the Dominion movie, which is just nifty attention to detail. On the teeth of the Giganotosaurus, you can see that it is missing one and it's chipped away, possibly referencing Rexy's teeth, who is also missing a tooth since Jurassic Park. But those are all the references for episode 1, so let's swiftly move on to episode 2. Start in episode 2, we get an awesome shot of the Giganotosaurus after it kills a parasaur, but then we cut back to the campmates where Ernest mentions that Dr. Ian Malcolm's keynote has just gone by, implying to be one of, or perhaps even the same one that Ellie and Alan attended when they first arrive at Biosyn, suggesting a first timeline alignment. The rest of the start of episode 2 is pretty comical, yet slow. But eventually we do get to the next Easter egg, and that's the Hyperloop tube tunnel that's featured. This is the first time we see it outside of Dominion and not in Dimetrodon territory. Oh, and fun fact, in my interview with the showrunner, the Dimetrodons were initially supposed to appear in the show, but they couldn't quite figure out how to make it work in their story, unfortunately.
We're trying, there was a world where we were going to try to drive the car through the Hyperloop and see the Dimetrodons. We were talking about trying to get Ramsey or Kayla into the show. And just, for one reason or another, whether it was producibility or just the way the story was turning out, we had to go away from those ideas. But
so because it's a new dinosaur, I have to ask, were there any other new creatures that you're trying to get in that didn't come through, or?
Well, like I said, I wanted to get the Dimetrodon in. We weren't able to do that.
But then we hear Lewis Dodson mention other prospects that Biosyn want to do, such as increasing life expectancy and health, something that Ramsey did discuss in Dominion as well. It's also confirmed that sub-level 10, the lowest level, is where they are currently training the baby Atrociraptors. This is one level lower than the restricted access we saw in Jurassic World Dominion, sub-level 9, explaining why the main cast of Dominion never actually came across these creatures whilst in the Dolomite Mountains. Hexapod Allies is then mentioned by Ben, alas. Now, if you don't know, Hexapod Allies was the name of the official program used for the Locusts, but only the extended edition mentions the name and delves deeper into it, changing the entire perspective of the movie's theatrical release. If you haven't watched the extended edition of Jurassic World Dominion just yet, I really don't know why, it's quite clearly the best edition. A few more scenes then pass by and Dr. Wu is mentioned to be the guy behind Project Theropod Axis. However, the interesting detail is where Yasmina goes ahead and says, of course the guy who made the Indominus and the Scorpius Rex would do this, but she does not mention the Indoraptor, which is also a Dr. Wu creation. That's because news of the Indoraptor never got mainstream enough after Fallen Kingdom, so these campers have no reason to know anything about it. Very neat detail there indeed. Then the Atrociraptors, known as the New Asset and B7, both exchange barks and calls to one another, showcasing their abundance of intelligence as they learn to communicate. However, since we know that the Atrociraptors are amalgamations with the Isla Sorna variants of Velociraptors, the sounds they use are actually Velociraptor sounds. Keeping up with continuity in the franchise. But now moving on to episode 3, many colours and variants of the Dilophosaurus appear first in episode 3, one of which is a new green coloured specimen which we haven't actually seen before, confirming that the Dominion Biosyn ones that we see are not the only Dilophosauruses in this territory. There's clearly other variants. Oh, and we can also put to rest an age-old theory, as we actually see that the Dilophosauruses are indeed affected by their own spit and venom, as one takes a surprise hit by another's, then rolls around in the dirt in some discomfort. Dr. Wu returns, but with the same voice actor from Camp Cretaceous, Greg Chun. However, he looks perfectly as he did in Jurassic World Dominion, from the cardigan to the hair and even the attitude. Fantastic work. But the Biosyn workers are what interests me. They are wearing the exact same suits from Jurassic World Dominion as well. Correct colours, masks, and logo placements. The only time we actually get to see these suits are when we do have Ellie and Alan rolling around in them. The blackboard in the background has very similar designs and drawings on them as to what we see in Dominion, but Wu also mentions at the same time that there are 2 assets currently loose. Now originally I thought he was on about the Atrociraptors, but we know more than 2 of them broke in and killed the scientists. I think there's at least 5 of them. So with Lewis Dodson also being on the same floor earlier in the episode and mentioning that there are loose assets, I think Dr. Wu is actually referring to both Maisie and Beta here from when they escaped captivity in Jurassic World Dominion. And then Wu goes ahead and mentions a more pressing matter that he needs to focus on, with that being the locust epidemic that's jumping continents. This story then continues on in the movie. Kicking things off with episode 4, we jump into another timeline alignment here as we witness Kayla's aircraft arrive at the Biosyn facility as it is seen being chased by the Quetzalcoatlus. And whilst we don't see the fate of the aircraft in the show, we all know what will happen to it because of Jurassic World Dominion. Then after we see the Biosyn outposts return in this show, we then come across a site of Pachyrhinosaurus family, confirming some other species resided in the facility that we unfortunately didn't get to see in Jurassic World Dominion. Rexy then faces off with the Pachyrhinosaurus family, which is one of the very first times and probably the closest we will ever get to a Tyrannosaurus vs Triceratops battle in the franchise, something that the fans have been begging to see for ages. As cool as this was, I still just really wish we will see a T-Rex vs Triceratops someday. Now, this tooth that we see of the Giganotosaurus that Kenji finds could be the same tooth we see damaged from earlier on in the season, but I don't think it matches the style, and Brooklyn refers to it being fresh, so not too sure on how fresh it actually is, but there is still potential it's the same tooth. Then finally we get some Giganotosaurus action, something we've been asking for, and it's really tense. Here we see it wrapping itself around the Biosyn vehicle and trying to snap up Darius, similar to when it wrapped around the vehicle in Dominion. And then we see a shot of it with the head at the same height as the outpost, again like Dominion, and finally it attempts to kill Yasmina in the same way that it did so with Maisie in Jurassic World Dominion. I'm going to be saying Dominion quite a lot throughout this video. And there's even a moment where the Giganotosaurus is being set ablaze, and funnily enough, that isn't the last time he'll have a run-in with some humans and fire at a dinosaur outpost, as we all know what Ian Malcolm ends up doing. Then we get the second face-off between Rexy and Zeb as they collide with each other once again and firmly headbutting, as they have done many times throughout the course of this day. Once the crew finally get to the right outpost, they search through the files of Biosyn's data under Project Theropod Axis, and they discover that Monolophosaurus is also within this compound, once again, another new species that Biosyn now own in this valley. But as we see the facial reactions of the campers watching the killings unfold, we actually hear a distinct Triceratops sound as it is killed off by an Atrociraptor off screen, the first indication of Triceratops appearing in the animated side of Jurassic. But then Sammy questions why Biosyn would do this, and Darius explains it's for money, power and control. This is where Kenji then chimes in with a comment saying that they could just be seeing if they can, a subtle play to the infamous Ian Malcolm quote from the first Jurassic Park.
Or are they just seeing if they can?
Before. Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Now we swiftly move on to episode 5, where we have the Quetzalcoatlus setting the tone of what's to expect as it stalks and pecks at the campers hidden within the outpost. But once it looks into the outpost, it resembles what the Velociraptors and Scorpius Rex did before entering the kitchen room to eventually attack the characters of both Jurassic Park and Camp Cretaceous. Yet again, another window moment. The Quetzalcoatlus continues to attack as Brooklyn and Sammy locate Bumpy's whereabouts, but unfortunately not too many Easter eggs or references appear in this sequence until they're stuck in a tree. Now this might be a little bit of a stretch, same with the next few, but having a 4x4 vehicle being stuck in a tree, yeah, that's a Jurassic Park thing. Whilst also in the tree, Sammy then uses, accidentally, the steering wheel for balance, which then suddenly turns the tyres and moves the car slightly. The same thing Tim did whilst being stuck in the car in Jurassic Park. And then the car falls back to the ground, just like in Jurassic Park as well. And even later on, that same vehicle lands on top of Darius, bringing him back into the car, just like it did in Jurassic Park as well. Brooklyn then hides behind an overturned tree. Since this is Biosyn Valley, it's given the same vibe as to when Kayla and Owen did the same thing when Rexy turned up at the scene. Episode 6 then continues the story after Ben takes an agonizing Thagomizer to the stomach, leading him to his eventual death in the season later on. As he lays there in pain, a Stygimoloch arrives onto the scene. Darius and Sammy attempt to disperse of this creature, and then it makes a sound that reminded me to the Pachycephalosaurus sound from the original Jurassic Park Operation Genesis video game from 2003. I don't know, maybe I'm going crazy and hearing things, but here's a slight comparison for you guys, and let me know in the comments.
Get going! Whoa. Come on!
But once again, the references begin to slow down, just that little bit more throughout this episode. Not before we get another timeline alignment here as the forest fire begins. This obviously took place in Dominion when Dodson accidentally caused a containment failure, letting out a swarm of locusts that are caught and covered in fire. The Therizinosaurus returns to feature in this show, and yes, it is the same one from Dominion, as you can see it's sporting the same whited out eyeball that's spotted in the movie. So maybe he really is the only one of his kind after all. It's even making the same echolocation sounds we hear from the movie as well. Now, this Therizinosaurus has been given the nickname Freddy by the fans for obvious reasons, referencing Freddy Krueger. And this one shot here showing the Therizinosaurus scrape its claws down the outside of the window is very fitting for that name. Then the episode begins to get very emotional when it's time to say goodbye to Smoothie as he heads back with his mother. It's so touching. But then the Italian theme from season 3 begins to play, as it's the very first theme we hear once Smoothie was born. Now, the timeline may have been overstepped a little bit here, but then the alarm we hear at the end of episode 6 is the one that's called in Jurassic World Dominion by Denise after Dodson's meltdown and witnessing the Biosyn fire. Now it's episode 7, and starting off strong, they ensure to mention the remote herding once again and not have it be a throwaway line like it was in Dominion, and the reason for this is explained just a little bit later on. Beckle Spinax is a welcome addition to the Biosyn Valley and also confirms that Biosyn was the owner of this creature back in season 1, but as I just said, the remote herding is explained to be technology created by Manticorp. This is something we pointed out in Jurassic World Dominion when it first initially released, and whilst the whole concept of Manticorp isn't exactly appealing, as to the rest of the franchise that is, they did reuse this technology in a better way, and I am glad they acknowledged it in Chaos Theory. Finally! We get to see a Dilophosaurus with an eye patch on, which is the same one that Bumpy attacked earlier on in the episode, or the one that got the venom stuck in the eye, meaning that there was enough time for a worker to locate this specimen and house it in an infirmary. And finally, at long last, the Triceratops makes its way into an animated project for Jurassic. For those who do not know, Triceratops and Apatosaurus are two big names that we never got to see in Camp Cretaceous, never got to see in Chaos Theory, until now, or at least for one of them. It's been very annoying for us fans to constantly not see this Ceratopsid, as it had plenty of chances to show up across the animated sequences. And of course, there was an abundance of them in Biosyn Valley, so honestly I think it would have been really disappointing to have not seen them in Chaos Theory Season 4. We can then see a Monolophosaurus scatter across the screen, a burnt locust, and then the Therizinosaurus shows up once more and swipes away a Parasaur in the same fashion it did with the deer in Dominion. This thing really likes slapping other animals, huh? Anyways, we get to see the Therizinosaurus actually be blind. As we know, it requires echolocation to get around because of its blindness, but without it, he walks directly into the log without knowing it was there. Great attention to detail. And there's some more great attention to detail here as we hear the roar of the Tyrannosaurus and Giganotosaurus facing off in the distant background, and the Therizinosaurus is alerted to this. This is another subtle timeline alignment as to when Rexy and Zeb first started their battle within the Biosyn HQ, just before the Giga was distracted by the flare towards the Therizinosaurus. And then, this shot. Here it is in Chaos Theory, and here it is in Dominion. Need I say more? It's clearly a direct reference to the scene, but unfortunately not exactly one for one. It seems they somehow failed to align them perfectly, which is staggering given how easy it is to just trace the scene over the top and get the right placement and species integrated with each other. As cool as this is, I do feel a little let down by the animation side of things. Nevertheless, the show continues and gives us a scene that shows this area just after the events of the movie, proving that both Pachyrhinosaurus and Monolophosaurus were just behind the camera in Dominion. Oh, if we waited just a few more seconds. After an absolutely badass battle between Kenji and the Dilophosauruses, we then arrive at our next Easter egg, and that's the Dilophosauruses following Kenji into the Hyperloop tunnel, which explains exactly how and why they got there to kill Dodson in Jurassic World Dominion. Finally, we have an answer to this, and it is a really good one as well. But then suddenly the power shuts down, which is yet again another subtle timeline alignment, as I believe this to be the first time where the power shuts down in Jurassic World Dominion, and then they went as a group to try and turn it back on within the tunnels. But then we move on to episode 8, where Brooklyn claims that the power outage came from the 3rd floor control room, right where the main cast of Dominion supposedly are at this point in time, so it seems like they are also the one to have caused this. The power is then switched back on, and back at the HQ we get to see the return of another InGen asset, the Ouranosaurus. Man, do I love this design and dinosaur. We haven't seen it return since Camp Cretaceous Season 3, so it's been a very long time, and I'm glad to have it back, in Biosyn's Valley no less. We then finally get to meet Smoothie's dad in such a heartwarming and touching reunion between the family. Certainly one of my favourite moments. But back onto the topic of Easter eggs, the Dilophosauruses are once again spotted en route through the Hyperloop before stopping to smell out Darius. Then, once it is clear, Darius inspects the CCTV footage of Dodson calling the Hyperloop train to his location, which then syncs up to this scene from Jurassic World Dominion. The power is then shut off again, which is during the second outage at the valley caused by, again, the main cast of the movie. This one should be where Ellie and Claire currently destroy the power grid of E1. This would ultimately get Dodson at death's door here as he tries to find another route through the tunnel. And we actually get to hear that death happen in the distant background, as Dilophosaurus sounds start to emerge and a man is then heard screaming. This is without a doubt the death of Lewis Dodson from the movie. And then, just as the campers walk out into the courtyard, you hear something fall to the ground, and we witness the dead Giganotosaurus, Rexy, and Therizinosaurus all together recreating the one specific scene from Dominion, but from an alternate angle this time, and it is fantastic. Annoyingly, however, the Therizinosaurus has all of his claws still intact, whereas in Dominion it shows the Giganotosaurus biting one of the claws off during that final battle, and you can visibly see it missing a claw in that one specific roaring shot, so just a canonical error here. But then another timeline alignment shows that the helicopter that the campers arrived in to the Biosyn HQ would eventually be the helicopter that the main cast of Dominion would use to escape in. The only off-putting thing here is that the helicopter should have really been heard the moment they stepped their foot out into the courtyard. Either way, this is still a really cool detail. Ben, who is currently knocking on the door of death, now gets a prehistoric styled flashback sequence as he starts to hallucinate, kind of like how Rexy got hers while she was practically dead during the final battle in Dominion. And then finally, episode 8, which is titled Lights Out by the way, possibly a double meaning referring to Ben's death, ends off with Ben at peace in his own world, and the credits begin to roll there, for the first time ever with no music whatsoever, set in a sad and quite frankly unbelievable tone that Ben may actually be dead after all. That cliffhanger then brings us on to the final episode of episode 9. But now we get our first insight as to what exactly happened after the main cast flew away from the valley. While their story is safe and sound, we currently still have 6 people in their early 20s trying to escape, and one of them almost dying back on the ground. But then we arrive at our next Easter egg here, where we see the statue that the Giganotosaurus threw Rexy down onto is used as shelter for these campers. Subtle, yet an awesome detail. Now this is the next part that confuses me a little bit. We hear that the Atrociraptors smell Ben's fresh blood, and that they are trying to get to him for an easy meal. But they don't smell the blood of the Giganotosaurus that they're currently standing on top of? It seems a little bit iffy to me. Oh, and then there's another Jurassic Park reference here where Kenji says, "Hold on to your butts." I don't really need to explain this one. As hope seems lost with the Atrociraptors about to attack, the Tyrannosaurus slowly makes her entrance and you can see the water shake in the puddle, another callback to Jurassic Park, and then we get one of the coolest scenes of not just Chaos Theory, but the entirety of the franchise. Look how menacing Rexy is here. This is where our next Easter egg occurs, as Rexy once again faces off with raptors. 29 years prior to these events, it was with the Velociraptors. And now in more modern day of 2022, it is with Atrociraptors. And then the Buck and Doe both arrive onto the scene. Oh my goodness, when I saw this, I jumped out of my seat. I was so happy to see this. And it is confirming that these two were in the valley to begin with. The same two Tyrannosauruses we see at the very end of Dominion, and the mother and father Tyrannosaurs from the Lost World Jurassic Park. They are, after all, siblings to Rexy, as these three Tyrannosaurs are part of the first initial 7 batch that were born in the franchise on Isla Sorna back in the late 1980s. But let's go back down to earth a little bit here. As cool as this is, I need to point out that for some reason this franchise just doesn't want to do these two justice. In Dominion, the Buck and Doe are 2 male Tyrannosaur models with the incorrect colour palette from the Lost World, and now in Chaos Theory they are 2 Jurassic World female models with again the incorrect colour palette from Dominion and the Lost World. I just wish we had a little more accuracy and less laziness going forward, but given how Jurassic World Rebirth turned out, I think lazy is probably their way to go for now, unfortunately. But also something that irks me is that with the appearance of the Buck and Doe this early on in the valley, it makes me question why Dodson was so happy to see Rexy arrive and face off with the Giganotosaurus and asking so many questions about these two, right at the start of this season, by the way. There is no way there is enough time off screen in this story and Dominions for there to be another shipment of Tyrannosaur. That's why I thought for a while that logically the ending of Dominion showcased the Biosyn Valley a few weeks or a month after the events of Dominion, implying that these 2 extra Tyrannosaurs were caught and rehoused later on, but now Chaos Theory shows that they were there to begin with. I don't know, it just feels very contradictory in my opinion. It's hard to make sense of it all. But enough of me ranting, moving on, we arrive at the airstrip that was shown in Dominion, and there's clearly been enough time for everyone to have left the scene by now, as we know that they were given interviews and patching up people in this very location in the movie. But after nearly 2 seasons of being in Europe, we head back to America. And we finally arrive back to Marshall Ridge in the United States, as some time has passed and Darius has a cool new looking hairstyle. Darius also confirmed that he is now working for Biosyn Valley, and even Dr. Wu is working with the campers, hopefully to make the world a better place. And even Brooklyn got a fantastic new prosthetic arm. There are so many cool new details here. But now, this part really got me when I first saw it. Gia arrives in a black car, and she is dressed from head to toe in black as well, which genuinely got me thinking she just came back from a funeral, and most likely Ben's funeral. So that's great detail there, and very tricky by the animators for those whom understood it, because it really was a gotcha moment as Ben is then later revealed to be alive. And Sammy sets down a pie on the table, which she has been trying to cook since season 1. This time it's not burnt or distracted by Atrociraptors attacking her. But Ben dying and coming back to life reflects back to the events at the end of season 1 of Camp Cretaceous, which Yasmina also references as the music begins to fade in. And to wrap things off in the show, we see a family of Pachyrhinosaurus roaming around the woods in the background, probably the same family from season 1. And then the very last Easter egg and reference on this list, number 88. One last image is snapped and it is used as the credits roll, relating back to that one specific image and selfie from the start of the season. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of Jurassic World Chaos Theory. Thank you so much for watching this Easter egg and breakdown, and thank you so much for watching my videos throughout the duration of Jurassic World Chaos Theory. It's truly been a blessing and it's been fantastic. But don't worry, our content will not stop just because the show has come to an end. There's so many more theories and details that I want to discuss and just get to grips with, so we'll be making loads more content. But for Easter eggs and breakdowns, this may be the last one for a very long time. We're going to have to wait and see as to when Jurassic Park Survival releases and if that is canonical, because that might be the next one to talk about. But if not, then the next Easter egg breakdown video that I will do that's taking place in the future will most likely be for the sequel of Jurassic World Rebirth. But of course I do have plans to go back to the previous movies, especially Dominion now, and try to connect a few things there and find some more Easter eggs and details. So if that interests you, go ahead and leave a like, and if you want more Jurassic World Chaos Theory content in the future, then of course you know what to do. Subscribe to the channel and stay tuned on here. We are trying to aim for 300,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we're getting so close to doing that. But most importantly, make sure you're all staying safe out there, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye. Hey, did you enjoy the video? Well, why not leave a like and subscribe for more Jurassic content? I appreciate every single one of you for reaching this point into the video and supporting me this far. If you wish to support me even further, then feel free to head on down to the description where you can find links to donate, my Patreon, and you can also press that join button to become a member here on YouTube and gain access to some awesome emojis. A massive thank you to all of the YouTube members for this month, as well as the amazing fans over on Patreon too. Your extra bit of support really goes a long way. But for now, I wish you a great rest of your day.